let's do another part on depth gauges. This time we're looking at shape. Brand new cutter. That's what it looks like there. Let's zoom in. Things that we're looking at. Top of the depth gauge has a small flat section. It slopes downward slightly and then goes into a rounded section. So that's what it should look like. Depth gauge number 2. This was done with one of these still progressive gauges. We have a small point at the top. That's pretty good. It then slopes down. These things put approximately a 10-degree downward angle on it. That's okay. Let's go to depth gauge number 3. Done with a flat style gauge. The top of this gauge is flat. It has a square edge. So what's the problem? When the cutter hits the wood, it initially rocks back, drives the heel down into the bar, the front of the depth gauge stands up, this hits the wood, the leading section of the depth gauge. Screws you over. It's the last thing you want. So now it's effectively running like it has a much higher depth gauge height. So what do we do about it? This is where shaping it comes into it. So just use that to cover your teeth, start shaping that front. Now this is going to be a big job on this one because it's obviously a cutter that I've done just flat. But every time you set your depth gauges, if you're using a tool like this, just drop it in behind it and just give it a couple of light strokes across the front, it'll reshape it. Now what you're aiming to do is keep a small flat section here on the very back of the depth gauge. It's approximately 0.5 millimeter or 1/20 thou wide. The rest of it doesn't matter. Get rid of it. All right, that one's not perfect, but it's the best I'm going to do with the camera in the way. Hopefully you can see we've changed the shape. Has a small flat section on top. Could probably be a little more rounded. That's done with the progressive style gauge. If you use one of these, do the same thing. Try and set it in behind to protect your cutter so you don't file it, and shape it. That's all we're going to do with that. It's extremely basic. It's a piece of advice for some reason most people don't follow. The actual part of the depth gauge that makes contact with the wood is extremely small. Also, when it makes contact with the wood, there is a better than average chance it's going to penetrate the wood. So the more efficient shape there really helps.